Connecticut seems peaceful, historic towns, quiet suburbs, scenic rivers, but beneath it lies some of New England's most haunting unsolved crimes. Let's dive right in. Number 1. The Connecticut River Valley Killer. In the late 1970s and 1980s, the Connecticut River Valley, a serene stretch of waterways and woodlands spanning New Hampshire, Vermont, and parts of Massachusetts, became the hunting ground for one of New England's most elusive serial killers. This unidentified assailant is believed to have murdered at least 7 young women, leaving behind a trail of brutal stabbings that shocked small communities and baffled investigators. Known today as the Connecticut River Valley Killer, this perpetrator targeted women in isolated areas, often near rivers or rural roads, using a knife in frenzied attacks that suggested a deeply personal rage. Despite decades of investigation, the case remains unsolved, with no definitive suspect ever charged. This is the factual account of the crimes, drawn from police reports, witness statements, and official records. The story begins in the summer of 1978, when the first confirmed victim was discovered. On July 25, 1978, the body of 27-year-old Joanne Dunham was found in a wooded area near Claremont, New Hampshire, close to the Connecticut River. Dunham had last been seen hitchhiking from her home in Charlestown to a job interview in Claremont. She was reported missing after failing to return home. Her remains were located by searchers in a shallow grave, partially concealed by brush. An autopsy revealed she had been stabbed multiple times in the chest and abdomen. The wounds were deep and numerous, indicating a violent struggle. No sexual assault was noted, but the ferocity of the attack pointed to a killer who struck with overwhelming force. Police canvassed the area, interviewing locals and following leads on suspicious vehicles, but no arrests were made. Dunham's case set a pattern that would repeat: a young woman alone in a rural setting, meeting a sudden and savage end. Nearly 3 years passed before the next linked victim surfaced. On May 30, 1981, 37-year-old Mary Elizabeth Critchley disappeared while hitchhiking from Boston, Massachusetts, to Waterbury, Vermont. She was last seen at a bus stop in Framingham, Massachusetts, accepting a ride from an unknown driver. Her body was discovered on August 9, 1981, in a wooded area off Unity Stage Road in Unity, New Hampshire, not far from the river valley. Decomposition made the exact cause of death difficult to determine, but authorities noted trauma consistent with stabbing. Critchley's belongings were scattered nearby, suggesting she had been abducted and killed elsewhere before being dumped. Investigators from multiple states coordinated, noting similarities to Dunham's case. Both women were hitchhiking, both found in remote wooded spots near the Connecticut River. Yet, with no eyewitnesses or forensic evidence like fingerprints or DNA, at a time when DNA technology was not yet advanced, the trail went cold. The killings escalated in 1983. On April 15, 1983, 36-year-old Linda Moore was murdered in her home in Saxtons River, Vermont. Unlike previous victims, Moore was not abducted while hitchhiking. She was attacked indoors. Neighbors reported hearing screams around midday, but no one intervened immediately. When police arrived, they found Moore's body in her living room, stabbed repeatedly in the throat and chest. The front door was unlocked, and there were signs of a struggle, including overturned furniture. Moore lived alone, and investigators believe the killer entered through an open invitation or forced entry without breaking in. Blood evidence suggested the assailant spent time at the scene post-mortem, possibly cleaning up. This indoor attack differed from the outdoor dump sites of earlier victims, but the stabbing method, multiple deep wounds, and proximity to the river valley led authorities to connect it. Just over a year later, in July 1984, the killer struck again. On July 10, 1984, 24-year-old Ellen Fried, a nurse from Skowhegan, Maine, was last seen making a phone call from a payphone booth near Interstate 91 in Lebanon, New Hampshire. She had been visiting friends in the area and decided to stop for the call. Her car was found abandoned near the booth, with her keys still in the ignition. Fried's body was discovered on July 22, 1984, in a wooded area off Route 120 in Plainfield, New Hampshire. She had been stabbed multiple times, with wounds concentrated on her torso. The location was isolated, surrounded by dense forest and close to the river. Police noted tire tracks near the site, but they led nowhere conclusive. Fried's case highlighted the killer's opportunistic style, preying on women who were momentarily alone in public spaces. Only 9 days after Fried's disappearance, on July 19, 1984, 16-year-old Heidi Martin vanished while jogging near her home in Heartland, Vermont. She left for her run in the evening and never returned. Her body was found on July 25, 1984, in a swampy area off Martinsville Road in Heartland, stabbed repeatedly in a manner consistent with the other victims. Martin's youth and the fact that she was attacked during a routine activity added to the community's growing fear. By this point, local media began reporting on a possible serial killer, though authorities were cautious about confirming links publicly to avoid panic. The most dramatic event occurred on August 6, 1984, when 27-year-old Jane Borowski became the only known survivor of the Connecticut River Valley killer. Borowski, 7 months pregnant, stopped at a rest area vending machine in West Swansea, New Hampshire, near the river. As she returned to her car, a man approached, asking if the payphone was working. When she turned, he attacked her with a knife, stabbing her 27 times in the chest, neck, and abdomen. Borowski fought back, kicking and screaming, and managed to drive away despite severe injuries. She made it to a nearby home for help and was rushed to the hospital, where both she and her unborn child survived. Borowski provided a detailed description. A white male, 20 to 25 years old, 5 feet 10 inches tall, muscular build, clean-shaven, with short dark hair and a Jeep-like vehicle. She also recalled him saying, "You beat me," during the attack. This survivor account was crucial, offering the first direct witness testimony. In January 1986, 36-year-old Barbara Agnew disappeared while driving home from a ski trip in Norwich, Vermont. Her car was found abandoned on Interstate 91 near Hartford, Vermont, with her skis still inside. Agnew's body was discovered on April 5, 1986, in a wooded area off Advent Hill Road in Heartland, Vermont. She had been stabbed multiple times, and her death was ruled a homicide. The location and method again matched the pattern: rural, near the river, frenzied knife wounds. The last confirmed victim was 17-year-old Bernice Courtmanche, who disappeared on May 30, 1984, from Newport, New Hampshire. She was last seen hitchhiking to visit her boyfriend. Her skeletal remains were found on April 12, 1986, in a wooded area off Trow Hill Road in Newport. Cause of death was determined to be multiple stab wounds to the neck. Courtmanche's case, like the others, involved a young woman in a vulnerable position in a remote area. Investigations spanned multiple agencies: local police in Claremont, Lebanon and Heartland, state police in New Hampshire and Vermont, and the FBI. Task forces were formed in the mid-1980s as the links became clear. Ballistics and autopsy reports showed consistent use of a knife, often with overkill, multiple stabs beyond what was necessary to kill. No sexual assault was confirmed in most cases, though some victims showed signs of struggle. Forensic evidence was limited: no fingerprints, no DNA matches, pre-modern tech, and fiber/hair samples didn't yield leads. In 1988, Michael Nicolo emerged as a person of interest after his ex-wife provided tips. Nicolo, a Vietnam veteran with a violent history, lived in the area during the killings and matched Borowski's description. He committed suicide in 2005 during a standoff after killing his wife and stepdaughter. Post-mortem DNA testing in 2010 linked him to other crimes but not definitively to the Valley Killer cases. Authorities noted similarities but lacked conclusive evidence. Other leads included a transient worker and a local man with a history of violence, but none panned out. In 2001, New Hampshire Cold Case Unit reopened files, using advanced DNA, but degradation and lack of samples hindered progress. The Connecticut River Valley Killer case remains open. 7 women dead, 1 survivor, no justice. Communities along the river changed. Increased patrols, self-defense classes, hitchhiking warnings. The killer's identity eludes us, a shadow over New England's peaceful valleys. The Connecticut River Valley Killer's reign ended as mysteriously as it began, leaving families and investigators with unanswered questions. Number 2. Martha Moxley, the Greenwich Halloween murder that still haunts Belle Haven. In the affluent, gated enclave of Belle Haven, Greenwich, Connecticut, the night of October 30, 1975, known as Mischief Night, should have been filled with harmless teenage pranks, toilet papering houses, ringing doorbells, and the excitement of Halloween Eve. Instead, it became the setting for one of America's most infamous and enduring unsolved murders. 15-year-old Martha Moxley, a bright, popular sophomore at Greenwich High School, was brutally killed just steps from her family's home. The weapon, a golf club from a neighboring estate. The case would expose cracks in privilege, ignite media frenzy, and leave a family, and an entire community, searching for justice that, nearly 50 years later, remains elusive. Martha Elizabeth Moxley was born on August 16, 1960, in Piedmont, California. In the summer of 1974, her family, Father David, a successful business executive, mother Dorothy, and brother John, moved to Greenwich for David's career. They settled in Belhaven, a private, waterfront neighborhood of grand homes, manicured lawns, and tight-knit families who valued privacy above all. Martha quickly adapted. Outgoing, athletic, and well-liked, she made friends easily. Her diary entries from that time paint a picture of a typical teenager: school, parties, crushes, and the occasional teenage drama. One entry from September 1975 noted her interactions with the Skakel brothers across the street. Tommy Skakel, 17, charismatic and popular, and Michael Skakel, 15, her classmate and friend. Tommy was being an ass, she wrote after one gathering, hinting at playful tension but nothing more sinister. On the evening of October 30th, Martha left home around 6:30 p.m. with friends to celebrate Mischief Night. They wandered Belhaven, egging cars and decorating trees. Around 9 p.m. Martha and several others ended up at the Skakel house, a sprawling property owned by Rushton Skakel, a wealthy industrialist and nephew by marriage to Ethel Kennedy, widow of Robert F. Kennedy. The Skakel children, 7 in all, were often left to their own devices under the care of live-in tutors and staff. That night, Tommy, Michael, and others were home. Friends later described a casual hangout: music, laughter, some alcohol. Martha was last seen alive around 9:30 to 10 p.m., walking toward her house with Tommy. He reportedly said goodnight and returned home. The next morning, October 31, 1975, Halloween, Martha's mother Dorothy grew worried when her daughter didn't return from what should have been a short walk. Dorothy called neighbors, including the Skakels. No one had seen Martha. A search began. Around noon, Martha's body was discovered under a pine tree in the Moxley backyard, near the driveway. She had been beaten severely with a golf club, the shaft broken off and used to stab her through the neck. The club head was missing, but fragments traced it to a set belonging to the Skakel family. An autopsy confirmed massive head trauma and defensive wounds. The attack was ferocious, suggesting rage or panic. Greenwich police, accustomed to low-crime suburbia, were overwhelmed. The crime scene was contaminated early. Neighbors and friends trampled the yard before proper securing. Initial suspects included Tommy Skakel, the last known person with Martha. He passed a polygraph but gave inconsistent statements. The Skakel family's live-in tutor, Kenneth Littleton, who started work that very day, was also scrutinized. His alibi shifted, and he later became a focus in some theories. Rumors swirled through Belhaven: jealousy, a rejected advance, or something darker. But no arrests followed. Evidence was limited. No fingerprints, no clear motive, no eyewitnesses. The case went cold. 4 years, it remained a local tragedy. Then, in the 1990s, renewed interest surged. Dominic Dunn's 1993 novel A Season in Purgatory thinly fictionalized the events, spotlighting wealth and privilege. Mark Furman's 1998 book Murder in Greenwich accused Michael Skakel outright, citing alleged confessions from his youth, including at a reform school where he reportedly said, "I'm going to get away with murder. I'm a Kennedy." A one-man grand jury in 1998 reviewed evidence, including a leaked 1992 Skakel family private investigation report, Sutton Associates, that showed inconsistencies in Michael and Tommy's alibis. Michael claimed he left early to watch a movie miles away. Others disputed the timeline. On January 19, 2000, 25 years after the murder, Michael Skakel, then 39, was arrested and charged as a juvenile, later tried as an adult. The trial in 2002 was a media circus. Prosecutors argued Michael killed Martha in a jealous rage after seeing her flirt with Tommy. Key evidence: the golf club from the Skakel home, Michael's changing stories, and witnesses claiming he confessed years later. Defense highlighted Tommy as a possible suspect and pointed to investigative flaws. On June 7, 2002, Michael was convicted of murder and sentenced to 20 years to life. But the story didn't end there. Michael maintained innocence. Appeals followed. In 2013, a judge granted a new trial, citing ineffective counsel. Lawyer Mickey Sherman failed to call alibi witnesses. The Connecticut Supreme Court reinstated the conviction in 2016, but reversed itself in 2018 4-3 decision, vacating it due to trial errors. Prosecutors declined to retry in 2020, on the 45th anniversary, citing insufficient evidence for conviction beyond reasonable doubt. Michael was freed after serving over 11 years. In 2024, he sued Greenwich and lead investigator Frank Garr for malicious prosecution and civil rights violations, alleging withheld evidence and bias. Today, the case remains officially unsolved. Dorothy Moxley, who attended every hearing until her passing in late 2024 at age 92, always believed Michael was responsible. "There's no doubt in my mind," she said in interviews. Brother John continues advocating. Theories persist: Tommy, who changed stories; Littleton, failed polygraphs; even outsiders. No DNA conclusively links anyone. 1975 forensics were limited. Martha Moxley was a vibrant young woman whose life ended violently amid privilege and secrets. Her murder exposed how wealth can shield scrutiny and how justice delayed can feel like justice denied. Belle Haven remains quiet, the pine tree long gone, but the questions linger in the shadows of those grand homes. If new evidence emerges, perhaps closure will come. Until then, Martha's memory endures, a reminder that even in the safest places, darkness can hide. Number 3. Cheshire home invasion. The night that shattered suburban safety. On a warm July evening in 2007, Cheshire, Connecticut, was like any other peaceful New England suburb. Tree-lined streets, well-kept homes, families winding down after a summer weekend. For Dr. William Petit, his wife Jennifer Hawk Petit, and their 2 daughters Haley and Michaela, it was just another ordinary night. But in the early hours of July 23rd, 2 men, strangers with long criminal histories, chose their home at random. What began as a planned burglary escalated into one of the most tragic and widely known home invasions in American history. A family was held hostage for hours, 3 lives were taken, and 1 man survived to bear witness. The Cheshire case didn't just devastate one household, it shook an entire state and sparked lasting conversations about safety, parole, and justice. The Petit were a close-knit, accomplished family living in a modest 2-story colonial on Sorghum Mill Drive. Dr. William Petit Jr. was an endocrinologist practicing in nearby Plainville. Jennifer Hawk Petit, 48, was a pediatric nurse and co-director of the health center at Cheshire Academy, a respected private school. Their older daughter Haley, 17, was a bright high school senior preparing for Dartmouth College in the fall, captain of the cross-country team, dedicated volunteer, full of promise. Michaela, 11, was a joyful middle schooler who loved cooking and spending time with her family. They were ordinary people living ordinary lives in a town that prided itself on low crime and community trust. The intruders were Joshua Komisarjevsky, 26, and Stephen Hayes, 44, both on parole after serving time for burglary and other offenses. On the evening of July 22nd, they spotted Haley and Michaela at a local grocery store or bank, accounts vary slightly, followed them home, and decided the house looked promising for a quick theft. Around 3 a.m. on July 23rd, they broke in through an unlocked basement window. They found William asleep in the sunroom and struck him repeatedly with a baseball bat, binding him in the basement. The rest of the family was awakened and restrained in separate rooms. What followed was hours of terror, demands for money, ransacking the house, and escalating violence. Jennifer was forced to withdraw cash from a bank, her last act of trying to protect her family. She returned home, and the situation deteriorated further. William, despite severe injuries, managed to free himself from his bindings and escape through the basement, crawling to a neighbor's house to raise the alarm. Police arrived quickly, but the home had already been set ablaze with gasoline. Firefighters found Jennifer, Haley, and Michaela inside. They had perished in the fire and from related injuries. The perpetrators fled in the family's car but were spotted almost immediately, leading to a high-speed chase and crash. Both were arrested within minutes. The investigation revealed a chilling randomness, no prior connection to the family, no deep motive beyond opportunism and criminal escalation. Hayes and Komisarjevsky had lengthy records of break-ins, and both had been paroled despite concerns. Evidence included DNA, witness statements, and their own admissions, each pointing to the other as the primary aggressor. The case moved swiftly to trial. Stephen Hayes was tried first in 2010. A jury convicted him on 16 of 17 counts, including capital felony murder, and sentenced him to death. Joshua Komisarjevsky's 2011 trial followed a similar path. Convicted on all major charges, also sentenced to death. Both men were held on death row. However, Connecticut's death penalty was abolished in 2012 for new cases, and in 2015 the state's Supreme Court commuted all remaining death sentences to life without parole. Hayes and Komisarjevsky remain incarcerated for life. William Petit attended both trials, offering powerful victim impact statements. He described the crime as his personal holocaust and spoke of the profound loss. "I have a difficult time sleeping and trusting anymore. I hope to continue to honor my family. I push forward in the hope that good will overcome evil." In the aftermath, Dr. Petit channeled his grief into action. He founded the Petit Family Foundation to support victims of violence, promote family safety, and fund education and health initiatives in his family's memory. The foundation has raised millions for scholarships, domestic violence programs, and community causes. Petit remarried in 2012 to Christine Krawiecki, and they have a son together. He has spoken publicly many times, on Oprah, in documentaries like The Cheshire Murders, and before lawmakers, advocating for parole reform, victim rights, and harsher penalties for repeat offenders. As of recent years, he continues this work quietly but persistently. The Cheshire case left deep scars on Connecticut. It prompted reviews of the state's parole system, tightened laws around home invasions and repeat offenders, and fueled intense debate over capital punishment. The case was cited by both sides in the repeal discussions. Cheshire itself changed. Residents installed security systems, neighborhood watches grew stronger, and the sense of invulnerability in suburbia was forever altered. July 23, 2007, began as a typical summer night and ended in unimaginable loss. Jennifer, Haley, and Michaela Petit were taken far too soon, vibrant women and girls whose lives mattered deeply to everyone who knew them. Number 4. Helle Crafts and the Woodchipper murder, Connecticut's first no-body conviction. In November 1986, the quiet town of Newtown, Connecticut, was blanketed in early winter snow. For Helle Crafts, a 39-year-old Danish flight attendant and mother of 3, life appeared ordinary. A loving family, a comfortable home, a demanding but rewarding career flying for Eastern Airlines. But behind closed doors, her marriage to Richard Crafts was unraveling. What followed became one of the most infamous and chilling murder cases in Connecticut history. A calculated killing, a gruesome attempt to erase all evidence, and a groundbreaking conviction in a case with no body. Helle Louise Crafts was born in Denmark and moved to the United States after marrying Richard Crafts in 1969. She worked as a flight attendant, often traveling internationally, while raising their 3 young children. Richard, a former pilot in the U.S. Air Force and Eastern Airlines captain, was charismatic but controlling. By the mid-1980s, the marriage was strained. Richard had begun an affair with a co-worker and reportedly resented Helle's independence and career. Tensions escalated through 1986, arguments, surveillance, private investigators hired by both sides. Helle confided in friends that she feared for her safety and had consulted a divorce attorney. On the night of November 18, 1986, Helle returned home from a flight. She was last seen alive by neighbors and friends around that time. The next day, she failed to show up for work and missed picking up her children from school. Richard told family and police that Helle had simply left, perhaps gone to Denmark to visit relatives. But inconsistencies quickly appeared. Her passport was still in the house, her credit cards unused, her luggage untouched. Friends and co-workers grew suspicious. Police opened a missing person investigation. Investigators soon focused on Richard. Neighbors reported hearing unusual noises the night Helle vanished. Loud machinery in the cold. Records showed Richard had rented a large industrial woodchipper from a local dealer just days earlier. He had also purchased chainsaws and other tools. When police searched the Crafts' home, they found bloodstains in the bedroom and bathroom, small but significant traces. Richard claimed the blood came from a cut hand, but forensic analysis suggested otherwise. The breakthrough came from the snow-covered roadsides along the Merritt Parkway and in a wooded area near Lake Zor. Witnesses had seen a man operating a woodchipper in the middle of a snowstorm on the night of November 19, a bizarre behavior that drew attention. Police and forensic teams meticulously searched the frozen ground and snowbanks. They recovered tiny fragments, blood, tissue, hair, bone slivers, and fingernails matching Helle's description. DNA and forensic odontological evidence, tooth fragments, linked the remains to Helle. The woodchipper itself yielded hair and blood traces when examined. The case hinged on circumstantial evidence and these minute traces. No full body was ever found. Richard had allegedly bludgeoned Helle, frozen her body in a freezer, then used the woodchipper to dispose of it in a remote area during the storm, scattering the remains across a wide area. Prosecutors argued the method was designed to make the crime unsolvable. In 1987, Richard Crafts was arrested and charged with murder. The first trial in 1988 ended in a mistrial due to jury deadlock. A second trial in 1989 resulted in conviction on 1 count of murder. Richard was sentenced to 50 years in prison, the maximum at the time. The case set a legal precedent in Connecticut and nationally. It was one of the first successful murder convictions in the U.S. without a complete body, relying on forensic trace evidence, behavioral inconsistencies, and witness accounts. The no-body aspect made it particularly eerie, proof that a person could be erased so completely, yet justice could still prevail through science and persistence. Helle's children were left devastated. They were raised by relatives and have spoken sparingly about the trauma. Richard Crafts served approximately 32 years of his sentence before being paroled in 2020. He has maintained his innocence throughout, though he has not publicly addressed the crime in detail since his release. The case inspired widespread media coverage, books, and even influenced popular culture. Elements appeared in the Coen brothers' film Fargo, though the filmmakers denied a direct connection. Helle Crafts was a vibrant woman, a dedicated mother, and a professional who simply wanted a peaceful life. Her disappearance in 1986 and the subsequent investigation revealed a darkness hidden behind an ordinary suburban facade. Number 5. Suzanne Jovin Unsolved Stabbing, the Yale senior's brutal murder, a 25-year campus mystery. December 4, 1998. The Yale University campus in New Haven, Connecticut, was quiet under a cold winter sky. For 21-year-old Suzanne Jovin, a senior German major, it was just another late night of work on her senior thesis. She was bright, disciplined, multilingual, politically engaged, and deeply involved in campus life. She had recently finished a draft on the rise of Osama bin Laden and global terrorism, a topic that, in retrospect, carried an eerie prescience. That night, she left a thesis meeting around 9:45 p.m., got on her bicycle, and headed toward her off-campus residence. She never made it home. What followed became one of Connecticut's most enduring unsolved murders, a brutal stabbing on the streets near Yale, a case that shattered a sense of safety, sparked intense controversy, and remains open more than 25 years later. Suzanne Jovin was born in Germany to American parents and grew up in a thoughtful, academic household. She came to Yale in 1994, excelling in her studies, fluent in German, French, and English. She was known for her kindness, her commitment to social causes, and her work with the Yale Hunger and Homeless Action Project. Friends described her as responsible, upbeat, and someone who always locked her bike and looked out for others. In the fall of 1998, she was putting the finishing touches on her senior thesis, a detailed analysis of the emerging threat of Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, written months before the world would come to know those names in horror. Around 9:45 p.m. on December 4th, Suzanne met with her thesis advisor, James Van de Velde, in his office. The meeting was brief and routine. She left on her bicycle, riding south on Edgewood Avenue toward her apartment on Fountain Street. Witnesses later reported seeing her biking alone. Sometime between 9:50 and 10 p.m. she was attacked. A passerby discovered her body shortly after 10 p.m. lying on the sidewalk at the corner of Edgewood and Dayton Streets, about a mile from campus. She had been stabbed 17 times, mostly in the neck and back. There was no evidence of sexual assault or robbery. Her bicycle lay nearby, her backpack and belongings were untouched. She died at the scene. New Haven and Yale police responded quickly. The crime scene was secured, and investigators began canvassing the quiet residential neighborhood. Early leads included reports that Suzanne had mentioned feeling watched or followed in the weeks prior, though she never formally reported a stalker. A pizza delivery driver told police he had seen a man standing near the intersection around the time of the murder, but the description was vague. No murder weapon was recovered. No fingerprints or clear DNA evidence pointed to a suspect in the initial days. The investigation soon turned controversial. Suzanne's thesis advisor, James Van de Velde, a part-time lecturer and former State Department official, was named a person of interest by police in early 1999. Van de Velde had met with Suzanne that night. He took a polygraph, which was reported as inconclusive or failed in some accounts, though details remained disputed, and police pointed to perceived inconsistencies in his timeline. He was never charged, and no physical evidence ever linked him to the crime. The public naming destroyed his career. He lost teaching positions and faced years of suspicion despite no indictment. Many observers, including some investigators and legal experts, later criticized the handling of Van de Velde as a rush to judgment that may have diverted resources from other leads. Forensic work continued. DNA was recovered from under Suzanne's fingernails, potentially from a struggle, but testing in the late 1990s and early 2000s yielded no match in existing databases. The sample has been retested several times with advancing technology, but no conclusive identification has been made. Over the years, dozens of tips have come in, some naming possible suspects, others describing suspicious behavior, but none have led to an arrest. The case has remained active with the Connecticut State Police Cold Case Unit, and Suzanne's family has consistently advocated for continued attention and testing. The murder sent shockwaves through Yale and New Haven. Campus safety protocols were strengthened, better lighting, escort services, emergency phones. Students and parents grappled with the reality that even a short bike ride home could end in tragedy. Suzanne Jovin was more than a headline. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, a scholar who cared deeply about the world. Her murder on a quiet New Haven street in 1998 remains unsolved, not because of a lack of effort, but because the evidence has not yet spoken clearly enough. The case stands as a haunting reminder of how violence can shatter ordinary moments, how suspicion can ruin lives without proof, and how the absence of closure can linger for decades. Advances in DNA technology offer hope that one day the truth will emerge. Until then, Suzanne's memory endures in the hearts of those who loved her and in the quiet determination to seek justice. Thank you for listening.